18 of the fantasy baseball season, and this could be the last couple days here before your trade deadline in fantasy league. So here's a few hitters I look to sell high and trade away this week. The first guy is Marte of the Oakland Athletics. So Marte, he's been a great ball player this season here for the Marlins, and then got traded to Oakland a few weeks ago at the deadline. And on the season here, 9 home runs, 31 RBIs, 61 runs scored, 30 stolen bases, a 320 average, and a 410 on base. So right here, he's already reached the 30 stolen base plateau with a month and a half left here in the regular season. And his power numbers aren't all that great, but everything else across the board is great this year. In the last couple weeks here for Marte, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 8 stolen bases, and 9 runs scored. So right now, he's scoring a lot of runs. His batting average and on base is a high number, and he's stealing bases at a rapid pace over the last few weeks with 3 games in a row with a stolen bag. The only down thing here for Marte is obviously the power with only 9 home runs on the season. But right now, his value's at an all-time high, and he's a player I definitely look to sell high here is Marte. If I could get a good bat and a decent starting pitcher for him, it's definitely a deal I would do. So the last few games for Marte: August 3rd versus San Diego, 3 for 4 with a homer, an RBI, and a stolen base. August 4th versus the Padres, 1 for 5 with a run. August 6th versus Texas, 2 for 5, a homer, 3 RBIs, and a run. August 7th versus Texas, 2 for 5 with a run, an RBI, a stolen base. August 8th versus Texas, 4 for 5, a run, an RBI, and a stolen base. And August 10th at Cleveland, 1 for 5 with a run and a stolen base. So right here, he's hitting the baseball great is Marte, especially the last 3-4 games. He's already got 9 hits in 3 games. So right now, while he's hitting the baseball great and he's on a hot streak, this is a perfect time to sell him high, because I think you could get a lot in return for him. And stolen bases, they're a little bit overvalued in some fantasy leagues, and I would use that to my advantage, selling them off. The next hit is AJ Pollock of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Pollock, he's been up and down this season, but overall the numbers have been pretty solid. 14 home runs, 46 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, 38 runs scored, a 309 average, and a 359 on base. But the last couple weeks here, he's been white hot is Pollock. 1 homer, 10 RBIs, 7 runs scored, 3 stolen bases, a 465 average, and a 478 on base. So the only bad thing with that is his on base to batting average ratio is way off, so he's not really drawing walks. He's a first pitch swinger a lot, is Pollock. And right now he's on a hot streak with this Dodger team. And he's a guy we know throughout his career, he's very injury prone. So right now, if I could sell him off and get a good starting pitcher, or even a hitter that's more consistent and not injured throughout his career, this is the time to do it. So the last couple games for him: August 3rd versus Houston, 1 for 4. August 4th versus Houston, 2 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs. August 6th versus the Angels, 1 for 4 with a run. August 7th versus the Angels, 0 for 1. August 8th versus the Angels, 3 for 5 with a run, 2 RBIs, and a stolen base. And August 10th at Philly, 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs. So right now, while he's on fire, is Pollock, and I don't think this is going to continue. This is a perfect time to trade him away right before the deadline, while his value as is at a peak value. The next hitter is Dansby Swanson of the Atlanta Braves. So Dansby Swanson, a former number 1 pick many seasons ago with the D-backs, and they traded him to Atlanta. And on the season, it's been a pretty good season here for Swanson, especially in the power category. 20 home runs, 59 RBIs, 56 runs scored, 8 stolen bases, a 255 average, and a 311 on base. In the last couple weeks for him: 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 2 stolen bases, 11 runs scored, a 370 average, and a 420 on base. So right here, the power is definitely surprising to me this season, that he's already at 20 home runs, where he could finish with 30 this year. And also the average is up there, especially for Swanson in his career, where he's a low 230, 240 hitter for the most time. So right now, while the power numbers are good and his batting average has jumped up over the last few weeks, he's a perfect sell high candidate. And the other thing going his way is also he's a shortstop, which is a pretty weak position, obviously, in fantasy baseball. So right now, if I can flip Swanson for a good package deal or a great hitter, this is the time to do it, because I don't think the power is going to be that legit. And we haven't even seen him hit a home run since July 31st, so he's in a power slump as Swanson. The average is going up, but I think altogether he's going to go in another big slump and the numbers are going to drop off. So right now, while the numbers are up, it's time to sell them high. The last few games, August 3rd at St. Louis, 1-for-4 with a run and an RBI. August 4th at the Cardinals, 4-for-4 with 3 runs scored. August 5th at the Cardinals, 2-for-4 with a run. August 6th versus Washington, 1-for-5 with a rib. August 7th versus Washington, 1-for-4. August 8th versus Washington, 1-for-4 with a run. And August 10th versus Cincinnati, 1-for-2 with a run. So right here, very decent hitting games for Swanson, especially that he's on right now a 7-game hit streak. But like I mentioned, he hasn't hit a homer since July 31st. So he's in a home run slump. And he's not going to keep this batting average up like he has over the last few weeks, hitting in the 370s. So if you want to sell him off and get good return for him, this is the perfect time to do it. The next hit is Garcia of the Milwaukee Brewers. So Garcia, it's been a good season for him. And this guy, we know he was a highly touted prospect many seasons ago in the Detroit Tigers system. And this season, for him, 20 home runs, 69 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, 52 runs scored, a 266 batting average, and a 330 on base here for Garcia. So very good numbers, especially the RBI, 69 here. So he's got a good chance of reaching the 100 RBI mark here. He's Garcia in the last couple weeks for him. 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 9 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 341 average, and a 426 on base. So right now, he's definitely not known as a great batting average hitter, is Garcia. His power is definitely legit, though, with the 20 home runs on the season. But everything's going right here for the Milwaukee Brewers and most of their players this season, besides maybe Christian Yelich. But Garcia right now putting up the big numbers, but I just don't buy it the rest of the season. I think that batting average could easily end up down in the 230, 240s when it's all said and done. So right now, while he's definitely tearing it up, is Garcia. I think he's a good sell-high candidate for a good starting pitcher in a 1-for-1 deal. So the last few games for him, August 3rd versus Pittsburgh, 3-for-5 with 3 RBIs and a stolen base. August 4th versus the Pirates, 0-for-4. August 6th versus the Giants, 1-for-3 with a homer, RBI, 2 runs scored. August 7th versus the Giants, 1-for-5 with a run. August 8th versus the Giants, 0-for-1. And in a doubleheader yesterday, August 10th at the Cubs, 1-for-3 with a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. So he's playing great baseball, no doubt about it. And it's a great time to sell him high, like I mentioned, because I don't think these numbers are going to stay apart the whole season. And the 5th and final hitter I look to sell high and trade away this week's Trevor Story of the Colorado Rockies. So Story, he thought he was going to get traded at the Major League Baseball trade deadline a few weeks ago, and that wasn't the case. And he just hasn't been hitting the baseball well most of the year. 15 home runs, 54 RBIs, 17 stolen bases, 57 runs scored, 254 average, and a 330 on base. So right here, Story, he's a free agent after the season. He's going to look to cash in, but right here, he's definitely been a fantasy baseball bust as being a first-round, early second-round pick in most fantasy drafts coming into this season. But the last couple weeks here, he's put up huge numbers. 3 homers, 8 RBIs, 10 runs scored, a 366 average, and a 458 on base. But I don't think it's going to remain here for Story. And obviously, he struggled without Nolan Arenado protecting him or just being in the lineup in general this season here for the Rockies. I know he's on a hot streak right now, but I would look to sell him off because he just hasn't done much all season besides his stolen bases are good. The average is down, the power is down, and he's not doing much like I mentioned. So right now, while he's on the uptake, it's a perfect time to sell him off this week. The last few games for Story, August 3rd versus the Cubs, 2-for-4 and RBI, 2 runs. August 4th versus the Cubs, 1-for-4 with a rib. August 5th versus the Cubs, 2-for-4, 2 homers, 3 RBIs, 2 runs scored. August 6th versus the Marlins, 2-for-3 with a run and a rib. August 7th versus the Marlins, 2-for-4 with 2 runs. August 8th versus the Marlins, 2-for-4 with a run. And August 10th at Houston, 0-for-3. So right here, he's been putting up good multiple hit games in the last 4 out of 5 games here. His Story, but I don't think it's continuing, and it's just been a struggling year for him. And even if he has a good final month and a half of the season, I don't think he's getting a big contract, and he's not going to finish with first round value in fantasy like he was picked this year. So I would sell him off. So that's a few hitters I look to sell high and trade away here right before the trade deadline in most fantasy leagues here in week 18.